So today we're going to talk about Etsy and Shopify, and we're going to compare them across a number of different factors to see which one is actually best for whatever it is that you're doing with your 3D print-on-demand business. So Etsy and Shopify are distribution channels. They are sales e-commerce channels. So what we're going to look at today is their cost, their interoperability, their marketing tools, how much control they give you, and how easy are they to use if you're actually just starting up. So before getting into those 5 items, it's really important to understand the platform that you're dealing with just generally and talking about what they are and what they were intended for. Etsy itself was originally designed as a way for people with kind of a garage cottage business to sell items online. It is focused on handmade, crafty type of items. So whenever they are making decisions within their platform, they are looking at how to make handmade, crafty items be sold better. So they're creating tools for that type of a person and in that type of a context. So whenever you are looking for what you want from a particular platform, you want to understand that platform to know that it actually does what you are expecting and will make decisions in the future based on what you are trying to do. Shopify, on the other hand, has been designed from the start to be a way for small businesses to create websites, mainly e-commerce websites. So they started out way back when as a purely software company where they wanted to build this way for people to put together a website fairly reliably and get something online. When they make decisions, they're questioning, how does this help a small business grow? So they are always working to figure out how to add more features and capability around that. They're not trying to figure out how do we sell more handcrafted things like Etsy. They're trying to figure out how do we allow businesses to sell more of their stuff. There is a different goal in that context. Etsy is trying to move product. Shopify is trying to sell a service to a business. So there are different endpoints on that. And this will become clearer as we start breaking down the actual operational differences between these two. So first of all, let's go ahead and look at cost, because this is what everybody is always thinking of when they think of one of these deals. The cost for these two different platforms are very different. Etsy is free to get set up on. It has no upfront cost except for a 20-cent listing fee for each new item that you list, which is negligible compared to the cost of the item, unless you're selling something like a 50-cent sticker. If you're trying to sell a 3D printed item and use like our 3D printing plugin, then you should have enough dollars to pay for the 20 cents of their listing fee. And it is only once a month or once every 6 to 12 months whenever you relist or refresh the listing. So it's a very negligible fee. But then Etsy has fees on the sale of the item, and these fees cover their credit card processing fees and the actual platform fee. Generally, this comes to somewhere between 5 and 8% depending on your deal with Etsy, and that deal with Etsy is constantly changing as they mess with fees. So there are different conditions around advertising and what type of product you have and that kind of thing, to where Etsy can have variable fees depending on what you're doing. But based on your listing, your product, double check with Etsy at the time of posting. It's generally going to be somewhere between 5 and 8% of fees. Etsy also bills for advertising, but that is kind of a different sort of context that we're going to talk about in advertising and is not required to use the platform. You can list on Etsy for free, but you have a 20-cent base fee, and then when you sell an item, you will be billed fees off of that sale. So you will be profitable right off the bat if you priced appropriately. Shopify, since they are selling a service, are selling the service. You can get a Shopify store kind of signed up and turned on and alive to where you can edit it early on, but you're not going to get it out into the world until you start buying a subscription. And the minimum subscription that you can get is about $5 to $10, where you get a very basic website and doesn't have a lot of functionality, but they'll let you turn it loose as like a beginner. But if you are actually doing e-commerce and wanting to do it for real, you will want to get one of the upper tiers where it can be $25 to $100 per month, depending on what it is that you're doing. So in that case, run through the bullet point list of what features you need. Do you need payments? Do you need other sort of functionality? Do you need detailed stats? That kind of stuff, to figure out which Shopify version is best for you. So they will let you sign up and start kind of messing around with your site for free, but to get that site onto the internet, you will have to pay a fee. In addition to that, since you are starting a Shopify website, you will also have to buy a URL. And a URL, that is the www.whatever.com. You will have to buy that URL. It will be somewhere between 10 and 20 bucks. You can get it from GoDaddy, and I'm sure Shopify has a listing for it also, and then get them combined. This leads very well, though, into ease of use. Shopify is a service for semi-professional small businesses. This means that they expect you to be willing to put in the time to get it set up right. There are plenty of tools around to make it easier to use. So you can set up a site, buy a URL from a Shopify itself, and get the site up and rolling. But if you have an existing URL over here, you're setting up a Shopify store over here, you are going to have to learn how to put them together. This is where ChatGPT can be really, really useful. So Shopify is meant to be kind of a semi-professional sort of platform, which means it expects you to be learning how to use it, not necessarily it leading you along. This is very important. Shopify can be very powerful because of this, but it's not necessarily easy to use. You're gonna have to flip some checkboxes and turn some things on and understand things about shipping and that kind of stuff for it to work. For example, with our Shopify plugin, you can have an order come directly to us and we will print it and ship it out to a customer for you. But in order for that to work, there's a setup process where you need to go through and mark us as a fulfillment provider and that kind of thing. It's not just magically click a button and it all comes together. You have to kind of tune it and turn it on. So there is a challenge there at times where you will have to probably go through some tutorials to do very specific things with Shopify. If you just have an item and you're going to take a picture and list that item on the site, that's easy enough. Shopify will guide you along, but you will have to connect to your billing account or turn on Stripe payments and so on and so forth, all these types of things. So there's a lot of caveats on that, Shopify is most certainly very easy to use compared to coding up a website, but that doesn't mean that it's easy to use for your grandma. You're gonna have to do a few things and know some good detail about what you're doing to get it done. Etsy, on the other hand, is very easy to use because it is for a grandma who crochets hats to sell something on Etsy. This is great because yes, you can make a listing. It'll guide you through all the checkboxes. If you didn't fill something out, it'll say you gotta go fill that out. Put some more stuff into here. Here's some tweaks of how you can do this, that, and the other thing. So it has a lot of resources and it guides you along by the nose a lot. In that context, it's easy to use. But since it is so easy to use, it can create problems down the line when you want to do more powerful stuff. And by that I mean like advertising and that kind of thing. It is easy to use and anybody can figure out how to do an Etsy store. So if you're a beginner, it's a great place to go over and kind of get the feel for e-commerce, but it won't necessarily help you much moving into the next stage, which is control. Control is really important. You are building a business online. You want it to grow to millions of dollars. You have to be able to do things that will give you an extra little edge whenever you can. Etsy does not give you much control. You cannot adjust how the listing looks outside of changing out photos and description. You are not able to direct money towards certain AdWords and that kind of thing. It is all kind of a challenge in that regard because Etsy is meant to be simple, quick, and consistent across its website because you're listing on their platform. So it's not even necessarily building your own store, you're adding listings to their platform. As compared to Shopify, where you're basically building a website, which means that you do have full control of how the listings look to a degree. Shopify can have some weirdness here too, to where again, you have to get smarter to get those extra features. But Shopify gives you lots of control of the design of the site, the design of your listings, how everything flows and clicks together and that kind of thing. You're able to put in new plugins and applications really easily. Etsy doesn't have a lot of those. There's a lot of resources just built into Shopify that give you the stuff you need to know what you need to know in order to get what you want out of your business. Etsy is meant to be a quick, fast, easy way to list stuff, but it's not necessarily meant to be the most optimal way of listing stuff. Shopify, you're able to optimize because they give you that control. The last thing we're going to talk about is interoperability of all of these things because that's a whole separate thing. How do they talk with their friends? But before we get into that, let's talk about advertising capability. This is fundamental. If you're on any of these platforms, you want to know how do they help you get customers in the door? Because it really doesn't matter if you can't. If they hide your stuff in the wrong spot of the internet, it doesn't work at all. So how do they help you with advertising? Let's go ahead and start with Etsy. Etsy is pretty darn good. Your listings will be listed on Google, and Etsy itself has a marketing budget because they're trying to sell your stuff to promote your things. So there is internal Etsy search, there is Etsy doing TikToks about your item if they really, really like you. There is all this exterior kind of help that can exist because they want people to shop on their site. So if your product looks good, they're going to use your product to get people to their site. So there is an incentive alignment there. Etsy does have internal advertising tools where you can turn on marketing for your stuff. And you can say, I want to spend $20 a day to advertise these listings, and it'll give you some stats back about how those listings are doing, saying like 100 people clicked on it, one person bought this, that, and the other thing. These are how well it's doing. The problem with this advertising, it works very well, but there is a cap on it. If you're really trying to grow your business, Etsy advertising is capped out at about $1,000. Some people can get it up to $10,000 if they're really, really large stores, but you have to consistently spend that. But you do not control that spend. This goes back to the control thing. Etsy does not let you force money into your store. You cannot buy 100 clicks in a day. It won't do that. You can have a maximum budget, and Etsy will spend up to that budget or spend below that budget. In the past, we have had Etsy stores that have been set at $1,000 per day of spend, and they spend like $200 a day during the Christmas season, and Etsy will not take any more because they don't have enough traffic. This can be a big limiter because we're not able to force traffic to the site, which is what advertising is intended to do. Let us get the data of the people that we know are interested in our stuff. Etsy doesn't give you control of that. So the advertising tools are great on Etsy because they're kind of point and click. You turn on ads and it'll advertise it somewhere out there, and they'll distribute it to their Instagram channels and wherever else. They'll figure out how to run those ads because you're on the Etsy website. But you cannot force the ads to go bigger to get more information or data. So you can't do experiments with them or anything else. You don't have enough control to do that. So if you want to just set and forget about it, it's pretty good, but it's not good if you want to scale up. And with the set and forget, Etsy is not very smart. You're not able to prevent it from overspending money on a particular listing. You say, I want to spend $200 for my store in a day or something like that, if you're really scaling up. But it could potentially spend all of that on a single listing because it's getting clicks, but it might not be getting sales, which means it'll go into this spiral of spending a ton of money on something that doesn't convert. So you have to keep an eye on it because their bot will screw it up for you. All of this is contrasted with Shopify. Shopify is a website builder. They don't have native advertising except as a tool inside of the site. Now, you have SEO optimization, so good Google search rankings and that kind of thing. Making sure your site is formatted well, all that stuff. They help with that. But then if you really want to start advertising like Etsy, where you just plug in an app and go, you have to buy those plugins from other people. It's a lot like our print-on-demand plugin where, well, Shopify doesn't have a 3D print farm in the back room, so you got to put our plugin in to get access to a giant print farm and produce thousands of parts. So Shopify has a lot of those tools available through their app store and other things, but natively Shopify doesn't really have a very easy and simple advertising method. Again, it's built for professionals who are looking to scale up a business and have Shopify scale with them. So it has a higher threshold of entry and expertise that's necessary in order to use it well. That being said, when you set all those things up right, you're able to force money into it so that you can scale up your store, make it grow bigger. You can advertise on Facebook or Instagram or Google or wherever it happens to be. And Shopify integrates with those guys pretty darn well to where you can put money where you want it and get really good data back and really good control of all that data and information and money. Unlike on Etsy, where you're supposed to kind of let them handle it and you give them some money for that advertising. And that's the other fee. Etsy will spend your money advertising your product on their platform, which they will then get a fee for the sale of the product. Your incentives are aligned, but they're going to sell whatever is good. They won't necessarily push your ads to the top of the listing just because you paid them enough in ads. That's kind of an incentive misalignment because they're going to sell the best thing, not necessarily your thing. And now it is time to get to interoperability. The Shopify App Store is a huge power benefit because it gives Shopify tools and resources that otherwise weren't available in just the platform itself. It allows it to distribute use. So like we said, Shopify doesn't have a print farm in the back. So if you're running a 3D print-on-demand business, you have to build your own print farm until we created our plugin. And now you're able to get access to our entire print farm to make and ship orders for your store. We also did the same thing with Etsy, but I'll tell you, the Etsy one was tough to build. Etsy is not built to have apps. Now, but even so though, they do have an open API. Etsy doesn't have an app store. It doesn't have a set of approved apps or anything else really of any sort. But there are applications that have been built into Etsy so that they're able to analyze your store, help you with advertising on your store, do print on demand and fulfillment for your store. There are print on demand sites that run on Etsy and can cause problems on Etsy because, again, crafty website. But Etsy is open to other apps, but since Etsy isn't really a software organization, they don't incentivize those apps, and it can be very difficult for those guys to scale up over there. Shopify has an app store. They explicitly work with other developers in order to create tools for your site. And Shopify, being a software-based company, much more than Etsy ever was, they are able to build tools and resources with other companies and understand where other companies are useful so that they can build tools for you. This might be the integration with Stripe so that you can do payments through Stripe rather than payments through Shopify. Etsy, you only have the option of payments through Etsy. So they're going to take their fees from you. Whereas again, on Shopify, you can optimize and pick your partners and use the resources available. You can use Printify, T-Launch, whoever it happens to be. All of them are over there, whereas some of them might be on Etsy, some of them might not be, who knows? There's not default interoperability on Etsy, whereas on Shopify, pretty much everybody operates on Shopify. The reason for that is Shopify is bigger. Shopify is tens of billions of dollars. Etsy is about a $3 billion, $5 billion company. They're small, so they don't have the same resources and capabilities that Shopify can give you to help your business grow. Shopify has the same incentives to help your business grow, because you're going to continue to pay subscriptions. As your store gets bigger, you're going to pay a larger subscription, and you might be using Shopify payments rather than Stripe just for the ease of the use. So they get that extra 0.5% out of every one of your transactions. So they have incentive and resources to help you grow. Etsy has a lot of different sellers, and their job is to give the customer the best thing that they see. Etsy's job is to help you show the customer the best thing possible. Etsy is trying to get somebody to buy. So there's a different prioritization there of what this company wants versus what this company wants. So you have these different companies, and that's great because now you get to choose which one is best for you. Etsy is quick and easy. It's very easy to get set up. It's very easy to run ads, and you don't have to have a lot of expertise to get rolling. So you can do tests and start up a business over there. And then once you mature and you understand how to advertise and you have an email list and those kind of things, which also, by the way, Etsy doesn't give you user emails of any sort. So you can't remarket to a customer except through Etsy tools. It's fundamentally not interoperable in that regard. Shopify has an email plugin to where you collect user emails as they purchase your items, and then you can send them follow-up sales and that kind of thing. It's a way better thing if you want to grow a large business over on Shopify. But if you're just getting started and just getting used to e-commerce, Etsy might be the right option because you know you have audience over on Etsy, you know you have easy advertising, and it's a nice controlled place. Whereas Shopify can be a big old monster to get wrangled if you're new to it and not ready to commit or don't understand how Facebook ads work and so on and so forth. Etsy puts a lot of that stuff behind a curtain and will handle it for you, just not very well. It's kind of a multi-tool, easy one-button push, whereas Shopify gives you all these knobs to twist, but now you have to know how to twist knobs. So which one is best for you? I don't know. Really depends on what you're doing. So if you're setting up a 3D print-on-demand business where you're selling something, you might pick your audience, you might discuss who is there and whatever it was. Shopify, you pick who you advertise to. Etsy, it is predominantly women shopping for gifts. So that platform is kind of who you're trying to sell to. Other people sell on there as well, and there's niches and some subgenres inside of there. But if you're just generically trying to figure out, will people sell something, Etsy might be a good place to start if that audience applies to you. Otherwise, you probably need to go to Shopify so you're actually getting good data of the people who are interested in your product. But ultimately, make the decision based on what is best for your business. Depending on what your item is and how well you are at advertising, you might want Shopify. If you're selling a nifty little fidget dragon or something like that and you just want to use something else, you can use Etsy, and that's fine. Both of them have our 3D print-on-demand plugin integrated with them so that you can get access to a giant print farm to support your business as it grows so that you don't have to build a whole factory yourself. But hopefully that helps you out as to the differences between Etsy and Shopify and things to consider when creating a 3D print-on-demand business. Have a great day, everybody.